Welcome to the Cycle Coach Show.
Empowering conversations on menstrual cycle coaching.
We're your hosts, Claire Baker
and Lauren Olivia Hughes. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cycle Coach Show. This is Lauren and I'm thrilled to introduce this next guest interview, this time between my co-host Claire Baker and Charlotte Pointeaux. Charlotte is an internationally award-winning, triple certified coach, youth mentor, shamanic craftswoman, host of the Wild Flow podcast, and a sought-after menstrual educator and speaker. She is the founder of First Moon Circles, a renowned facilitator training program which trains menstrual educators to prepare, honor, and celebrate children and their caregivers at menarche. Charlotte was also part of the 2020 Year of Cycle Coach School and is now one of our program mentors. You can find all of her wonderful offerings and podcast at charlottepointeaux.com or on Instagram at charlotte.pointeaux.coach. Both of which will be linked in the show notes below. Needless to say, this wise woman has plenty of knowledge to share with us, especially around owning a successful business in the menstrual cycle realm. Listening to her and Claire discuss the arc of their businesses together was pure magic. Now, they did end up talking for over 2 hours. That's how much delicious content they dove into. So we did decide to split their conversation into 2 parts. During this first part, they really focus on the pillars of running a successful business. I had a hard time keeping up. I was taking so many notes, and the nuggets of gold they shared were ample. Some of my favorite parts were around the art of finding your niche, the shamanic approach, working online versus offline, and balancing business and motherhood. In the second part, Claire and Charlotte delve into some questions from our Cycle Coach School community, so stay tuned for that episode dropping very soon. For now, please enjoy this wonderful conversation between these 2 powerhouse women. Don't forget to rate, review, and share this episode if you love it as much as I do. Now here is Claire and Charlotte.
Charlotte, welcome to the Cycle Coach School show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you and for this podcast to be out in the world. Yay! Celebrating.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. You've inspired me for a long time with your podcasting skills and experience. And so it feels good to be joining the party.
Yay! I think this is so needed and going to be so special for people who are working in the space to be able to hear about what's involved with doing this work and, sharing stories and all the things, just having that point of connection. So it's really, brilliant that it's here.
Yeah, it's the first podcast dedicated to the modality of menstrual cycle coaching, which I feel pretty proud of and excited about. So we're really thrilled to have you on as a guest for our first season. To begin with, I would love to know whereabouts you are in your menstrual cycle today and how you're feeling.
So right now I'm on day 19, but I reached the real pinnacle, the zenith of my cycle yesterday. I could feel myself ovulating, and I could feel a peak in energy that I've not actually felt for a few cycles. It's been really interesting to ride a journey of having really a really flat ovulation time and even not being entirely sure if I've ovulated, and just being with that and really heeding the call to nourish myself. But it's been a few months of disruptions to normal life, travel when I came over to the UK and we met up over there. Winter here in the Southern Hemisphere has been really cold, really dark.
And just a lot happening in my personal life and with my kids, and it's felt quite stressful. So I kind of haven't really been surprised that my cycle has been a reflection of that. So to feel from nowhere this really beautiful kind of like rising like Aphrodite out of the waves was kind of how I sort of, the visual and the sensations and the sort of sense I get of ovulation. I felt that again. I was like, oh, this is just lovely and so welcome and so like just oozy and delicious. But I've also had really tender breasts, and I could feel, womb not cramping, but that kind of like tightenings and just interesting sort of sensations that I haven't felt for a while at that time of my cycle, not for a very long time, since my cycles were coming back off after breastfeeding. So yeah, it's quite curious, but I feel right now it's nearly 8:30 p.m. And I've had a day with my little daughter and just been to jiu-jitsu training and had a shower. And so I feel at the same time like high energy and like just a bit oozy and contented, and I feel really good on the inside, but also a bit of a slowing down coming to the end of the day. So yeah, slightly longer cycle I'm anticipating this month. I'm just going to be really gentle over the next few weeks. How about you, Claire?
I'm on cycle day 23, and my cycles are about 26, 27 days, so I'm on the home straight. And I've been ready to bleed for about a week. It's just been such a busy time this summer, and I've taken 2 international flights this cycle. I've been on a family holiday with my in-laws. I have held a cycle coach gathering in the UK. We've launched the next training. Like, it's been such a full-on time, and I can feel it. My body has been ready to let go for a number of days now. I'm being so productive in this inner autumn. I'm really moving forward on things that actually feel like a priority. And I feel like I've really got that end of cycle nesting energy that feels motivated to get stuff done and wrapped up. So I'm trying to remember to shift down the gears in anticipation of my bleed in a few days' time. It's always interesting navigating the dance between wanting to get things wrapped up so you can rest at menstruation, and then also slowing down in the lead up.
I feel that so much. Yeah, that's so interesting, because I've been having really, as I was just saying, flat sort of feeling cycles for the last little while, and I sort of feel like I've been creeping over, like pulling myself by my claws over the finish line a little bit, like just bring me the reset and the relief and just the like permission to cocoon. And it's sort of like there's been this story of, well, you don't have your periods, you can't stop yet, and it's like fighting that productive, worthiness narrative that's there. So just really reminded of that in what you're sharing about where you're at in your cycle, but that sort of yearning to collapse and retreat, and needing to get stuff done, because that's life.
That is life. Yeah. Today we're talking about business, and I invited you on specifically to come and have this conversation with me because I really admire the way that you work in the world and how you how you do life and how you parent and how you run a business. And Charlotte was in the first round of cycle coach school in 2020, and I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to adopt you into it. I need this woman in my life, in my personal life. I need her to be my friend, and I need her to be my teammate, and I'm so glad that has manifested over the years. And I think we can have a really valuable conversation. So I have lots of questions from our community, actually. I put a call out for some great questions on business. Questions that range from how to, what to focus on when starting a business, questions around money, questions around going all in, how to deal with self-doubt. We've got lots to cover. But first, I want to invite you to share with our listeners some more about you and your journey and what led you to this work.
Thank you. And thank you for your beautiful words. I'm so touched and just like have felt the same too. So yay. Yay for us. So let me cast my mind back. So when I took the training with Claire, I was, I just had my third baby. I was a life coach. I was working with women, particularly mothers, very much in a phase of rediscovering who they were in motherhood. I was doing a lot of work around sacred self-care, like matrescence as that rite of passage into motherhood, except for I didn't call it that at the time. It was very much this kind of like rediscovery of self after our bodies had gone through chaos of pregnancy and postpartum, but really that spiritual understanding of who we are and trying to sort of rediscover what we wanted for ourselves in our lives. The women who I was working with started bringing to me awareness of their cycle and how it was influencing their coaching goals that we were working on. And I was starting to recognize they were in session depending on where in their cycle they were. I was really witnessing them setting goals as well that they felt like they really had to stick to and stretch to in order to get the value out of coaching. Then halfway through having this massive wobble and going, I'm not sure that's even what I want anymore. It sort of became this really interesting journey that like a pattern that was showing up. And the more that my clients were really talking about their cycle, I was postpartum, breastfeeding, hadn't had a period for properly, like continuous cycles for a few years because I had 3 children fairly close together, 2 years between each one, maybe had 1 or 2 periods in between when I was breastfeeding and then conceived again, and had been on the pill for many years prior to that, from the age of 16 to 30 when I fell pregnant. So I was kind of like, well, I don't really have much of an experience of my own cycle. And I was really interested, and I started learning from books and from reading and doing whatever I could to kind of understand this, because even though it wasn't my personal like need in my own experience to figure something out, something really spoke to me on a very deep level. We were doing this, as I say, this quite spiritual work really with women, and I was just really called to discover. And I thought, well, maybe I can support myself when my cycle returns as well. And I know full well that I've got so much more body literacy after going on off the pill and discovering my fertility and trying to understand my cycle and all of those fertility signs. That was really the first time that I tuned into all of that. So it was from there. And then I found you. I'd been following you for quite a while, actually. I can't even remember how I found you, but, you know, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, this is really, really held something for me that kept calling me back. But it was really my clients who brought me to this work. I started designing, you know, resources and guides just based off what I was learning to support these women to start to chart their cycle and understand it a bit more. But I didn't really have any grounding in it, no training in it. I wasn't having my own experience in it. So I was kind of like, I need some mentoring on this. At the same time, was being asked by women in my community, because the other thing I was doing was I'd been trained as a youth mentor and was doing sisterhood circles for girls, tweens, and a mother asked me if I would do a period circle basically for her child to teach her about cycle wisdom. She couldn't have a productive conversation with her child about periods and puberty. She didn't want to hear it from her. She was really embarrassed and said, you know, would I do something on this? And I was like, well, I'm learning and I'm interested myself. Sure, like I'd love to weave all these things together. And so I started doing that as well. And then that's become like a major piece of my work now. It's grown into First Moon Circles and my facilitator training as well. So it's kind of like all of these things just colliding at this like really synchronous moment in time. And that's when you put your first email out. You were like, you know, this training is coming. And I was like, keeping my eyes peeled. And then all kinds of things just came, the opportunities collided. It opened itself up. I didn't think I could join, blah, blah, blah. Stepped in, and here I am. That was 2020. And it really just cemented, this is absolutely vital and essential and the core component of my business and my work. So yeah, that's how it really came to be.
We share the path that led us to this work in the sense of working with already coaching and working with women and noticing these patterns and noticing these questions around the menstrual cycle and the difference between how, let's use the words masculine and feminine here, how a more masculine goal might be about more linear, getting from A to B, whereas a more feminine approach might be something that's more cyclical, and that takes into account death and rebirth and ebb and flow, and the fluctuating nature of the female body is a great imprint of that. What I really admire about you, one of the many things, is that you have focused quite specifically on the more shamanic dimensions of menstrual cycle awareness, and also teaching young people through First Moon Circle, your facilitated training. And I love that, because something that I notice is that sometimes we can try to do too many things and attempt to be an expert, across the board. And although menstrual cycle coaching might seem quite niche down already, actually there's a whole universe in there. People could work in hormonal health, for example. People could work in postpartum. People could work with people who are perimenopausal or postmenopausal. And so I'd love to hear you speak about what that has been like for you, choosing the dimensions that you've chosen to really embody and to go into, and to leave behind the stuff that doesn't resonate with you. What's that been like?
That's a beautiful question. It's really interesting because I have had the awareness of myself over the last couple of, maybe the last month or so, where I've had so many questions being asked of me by women I know in my local community, particularly about their period problems. And I'm like, actually, this isn't my realm. I'm not the hormone specialist. I really recommend you go see somebody who is. And the thought, of course, inevitably, naturally, creeps into my awareness. Maybe you should train in that, because there's a demand for that, and you're passing up and referring on all of this business to others. And I'm just keep coming back to that core of what is aligned and true for me? What is my passion? And I have a degree in biology. I have a grounding in all of this. So if I wanted to really dive into it, I could. But it's not what really speaks to me. And so I definitely didn't call myself a spiritual life coach. I just called myself a generic life coach at the time. But it was really just this spiritual aspect, the shamanic aspect, that just kept pulling me deeper and deeper into it, as into this gravitational field, really, of this is what is really true and aligned for me. If this is where I shine, this is where I'm passionate. Sure, there's opportunities in all of these other things. And of course, I've looked at all of the trainings over the years, but it's just not what lights me up. I think about, where do I really feel into flow? Where do I feel like I could speak forever on without wanting to stop, without getting bored? I think about what that might be like to do that kind of work. And that is just not me. That is, I accept that my inclination is much more around this shamanic approach, which really is focused on, you might call it the psycho-spiritual realm. But really what it is this interconnectedness of all things. And for me, it's really about cyclical living beyond menstrual cycle awareness. And it's having this lens, this view, this framework that really I've embedded in my work, in the way that I guide clients. But as you said, embodied, it's who I am and what I hold true, because I deeply, deeply believe and have come to see we might fix, lifestyle tweaks here and there. We might do some testing and, do some of those health aspects that I keep being sort of, oh, should you do some training in that area? But what I really see is that if we don't take a broader perspective and look at our lifestyle as a whole and our relationship to our body and our cycle, look at our menarche, our first periods, and how that really held us or didn't as a rite of passage, and just taking this big picture view of our menstruality as a whole, but even beyond that, like our entire life from birth to death, if we're not honoring the cycles in all things as mirrors of each other, then we can still, we're not really getting it. I think it's easy to kind of outsource onto, I just need to take this supplements or do this thing and then it's all going to be fixed. I feel like it's in this really shamanic view where we take this bigger picture look at the interconnectedness of all of the ways that we honor our body and our cycle and live our life and treat everything as a cycle, because actually everything is a cycle. And when we really relate to the way that we work, the way that we live, the way that we eat, the way that we parent, the way that we exercise, the way that we tend to our spirituality, the self-care needs that we have, everything is cyclical. And I think that it's in taking that much bigger holistic picture that we can really do some deep inner healing work. And I think that can just be missing in other approaches, but that is also what really speaks to me. And so that's just what I've really brought through into my work. It's holding that view. And then from there, yeah, absolutely, we can dive deeper into, okay, you and your particular journey, this is where we need to go. We're being called to look deeply at this particular aspect, this challenge, this part of your cycle. But we're not just zoning in on that. We're taking, this broader picture as well and holding that micro and macro perspective. And there's so much healing available when we really do look at our relationship to how we feel about our body and how we feel about having a period, how we feel about being cyclical in this world that expects us to be consistent, productive, linear, generally just like superwoman every single day. And I think it's really in breaking down some of those beliefs and those patterns and how, we've internalized a lot of shame as well, that is really powerful work. And so, I think what I'm really feeling is that there's just room for all of us. And so when I really connect with what's true for me, I know this is true for me. This is what I get really passionate about. And so this is what I just really bring through in my work, trusting that, I can refer people to go and see the hormone or person or the nutritional hormone support woman or the person who's doing fertility awareness, for example. Like there's so many different, as you said, there's so many different micro niches that we can really step into and claim. And I think that, doing that can be really powerful. So I know what my work area is, and I just really have to keep trusting that that's where my magic is, and to, there's room for all of us. So yeah, I stay grounded in my truth around that.
Yeah, you do, and you do it brilliantly. And I also appreciate the honesty you shared, that sometimes those thoughts come in, oh, maybe I should be doing more nutrition, for example, or doing more study on hormonal fluctuations. Like you say, you have a degree in biology, you could certainly continue to ground yourself in that space if you wanted to, but there's a really big difference between noticing that thought that's like, oh, maybe I should be doing that because somebody else I've seen online is doing that, or because people are asking me for it, and that deep soul calling, that excitement that we feel when something's really right for us, the passion, the motivation that naturally emerges when we find a topic or an area of our industry that really lights us up. And I really hope that for folks listening, that can be a permission slip to follow the bits that do light you up, and trust your instincts. And who knows, maybe down the line that particular mode of study might circle back around and then it does feel like a great move. But we don't have to do everything. We're not, me, Claire Baker, as an individual, can't teach every single person about every single aspect of menstrual cycle awareness, and neither can you, and neither can any of us as individuals. But as a team and as a community, we can collaborate and, like you say, refer people onwards, have a great referral list and be referred to then as well. You're the person then that people will refer to you when somebody wants to explore their rites of passage, their menarche work, their matrescence, their shamanic dimensions of their menstrual cycle. And at the same time, they could be working with someone on nutrition to ensure they're eating enough protein, for example, or managing blood sugar levels. They could be working with somebody else on natural fertility and learning how to chart for contraception or conception purposes. So we don't have to provide everything. We can choose to be in the lane that's right for us. I'm curious about how you work really well online and offline, and I admire this about you as well. You have a great array of online offerings where people can come and be a part of a membership or through the courses that you run. A lot of your coaching, I know, is online, one-to-one, but you also hold circles in person locally where you live very regularly, and have recently run a series of day retreats here in the UK. So you're working globally on offline, in person, IRL, and also I know a lot of your business is online. Could you speak a little bit about what it's like navigating both of those universes and what you love about them, maybe what you find challenging about each of them?
That's a really great question. Yeah, I started my business originally with the circle work, and that was in person. So I've been doing that for 6 years, I think it is, 6 or 7 years, and just absolutely love having that real sense of being together in person. And I just think that when you're holding space and doing circle work in workshops, like the connection, the like oxytocin is so real. There's a real feeling of coherence, and that the resonance in the room is just really magical. And so that real being together, having the time, having the space, there's no distractions, everyone's there for each other, for the moment. It's really powerful, and I just absolutely love that. I don't do one-on-one coaching face-to-face in person. It's all online, and I really love that. I know lots of people do clinic work, but for me, I just adore being able to log on to Zoom, create a really beautiful coaching container with somebody, really creating that safety and that circle feel, even though you're online and often thousands of miles away or even on the other side of the world. You can really create intimacy online and do some really great work. But what I find really helpful about online coaching specifically is it helps me boundaries. So energetically, it helps me to really just hold the container of this is the time we're spending together. I'm less likely to overrun and like drain myself. I think I've really learnt from my early days of doing circle work as well. I used to feel like I would open my energy so much and then just give everything in the pursuit of really wanting people to feel something and have solve everybody's problems, or in a coaching sense, give all the knowledge that I could. I find that being online is a real reminder that we're meeting somebody where they're at, we have time, and we're in a process, and we're working together, and we're going to titrate that information and really allow people that space. And so it helps me to really define the time. This is what we're doing together. This is where we're at. We're not going to rush ahead. The time comes to a close, and it's a beautiful way to just end that, ending that space. And then for me, it's there's no overheads. I'm not paying for a clinic. I can shut Zoom and I don't have to travel anywhere. And it's it's done. So I think for me, it helps me to hold my energy and boundaries around that. I think that's really important. That's been a real lesson for me over, the years. And the more I've stepped into space holder work and even trainings around that as well, it's really helped me to kind of separate my energy from giving so much to a client, because that was definitely a challenge. I love online for the fact that we can work with people anywhere in the world. That is such a gift. I've made such incredible connections with people, with clients, as well as, you know, through the school, for example, and being able to support people and meet people and feel part of this global community. That is so important to me, and I just think that is incredible. I'm forever grateful for Zoom. I do think it's one of the gifts that we really got out of, those really tricky COVID years. And I've really loved being in the online space for the fact that I get to, I get a sense of, I think one of the things is access to a broader bunch of people, where in the local community, and I know that this is true for some people even more so than for myself, where you feel like you're in a community that isn't open to this kind of work. So doing this work in person, just in your local community, might not be as sustainable or nourishing even, or abundant as it can be online when we have access to, you know, such a broader scope of people. And I've definitely found that to be true. The women who come in my local community to my circles, it has definitely evolved over time. I think building up that in-person community, it really has taken years to get it to a point now where it's really quite big, and, you know, people come and they go, and it's not always the same people every time, and word of mouth is spreading, and, you know, it's this beautiful flow, but it really took some time for it to be like that. Online can give us a real sense of, you know, sometimes you feel like you're speaking into the ethers and not necessarily to a person, but there is that potential for really connecting with and attracting and you know, working with really aligned people as well, who sometimes are hiding in plain sight in our local community. So I don't actually do any in-person coaching with many people at all in my local community. I definitely have worked with some, but by no means many. So most of my clients are either across Australia, you know, all around the world, to be fair, Europe, US, and places scattered in between. And I just really love that. Yeah, I think that's a really great question. How about you? I'm really interested to hear what that's like for you.
Yeah, when I first started coaching, I was coaching in person and coaching online. And I very quickly realized some of the things you've mentioned around boundaries and time. I noticed I would go into a vortex with people and just completely lose track of time. I was also a fresh coach, so I was also learning. I've definitely become better at time management over the years. But I also noticed that when I offered those clients online sessions, they actually started to take those up more than the in-person sessions. It meant they didn't have to worry about traveling times. It meant that they could just turn up to a session in their pajamas, or like switch video off if they wanted to just have an audio session. And I've definitely learned the skills to be able to, like you say, to create a space that feels collaborative. There's a connection between myself and the client over Zoom. And to really be able to feel someone, actually. So I also prefer one-on-one work online. And when I reflect in my own life, I see my therapist online. I've seen other practitioners that I've worked with online. When I'm attending group sessions, often I do like to be in person. I think there's really something beautiful about a group session that can be in person, and I really enjoy holding in-person workshops and circles and spaces. I've definitely done a lot less of that since 2020, but it's something that I really want to invite more in. But like you say, you know, there are more overheads, there's a lot more logistics to manage, and so I admire, you know, peers of mine who I see traveling the world. They're running retreats in all kinds of different countries all of the time, but that is a lifestyle. It's a very specific lifestyle, and that's actually not really the kind of business I want to run. You know, I also want to be able to turn up to my computer in my pajamas and do some good work and like you say, be able to switch the computer off. And so I found online business to be extremely rewarding for me, very nourishing. And I think it's important to also, for me, it's been important for me to also have that connection with people in person. And it's why I love organizing like the gatherings that we've done here for the school in the UK and in Australia, and just ensuring that there's also opportunities to get together in person. I mean, you and I have spent plenty of time in person, like Lauren, another team member, we got together recently. It's important for me to create those in-person connections. But I love the fact that for me, my business has always been spread across the world. I'm Australian, but I live in the UK. You're from the UK, but you live in Australia. Like, naturally, our businesses are global. I've got a huge percentage of my business in North America now. It's by far the majority. So that's incredible to me that I'm able to work with people from all over the world. I think having both has worked really well for me, and I can see the same for you. I am inspired by your local circles. I think the next time I find myself somewhere in a base, I'd love to be able to work up to that. But like you say, it takes time. It takes time to build that local community and that trust, and getting, you know, people to come and tell their friends and build that word of mouth. And once you have that, it's strong. But yeah, it takes time. Yeah. Before we jump into the Q&As that I've got from our community, I have a question that really is from me, very much from me. What's it like being a mother of 3 young girls and being self-employed? How do you feel it strengthens your, you know, the hat you wear as a business owner and coach? And in what ways is it challenging?
I'm grateful every day that I run my own business. And I think I say this every week to my husband, thank God. Actually, both of us run our own businesses, and we go through seasons, like all business owners, where it's incredibly difficult and incredibly challenging, and it is absolutely with its challenges, constantly having to discuss and negotiate between us who's available, who's doing school pickup, who's taking the youngest, who's only in pre-kindy, so does 3 days. Starting school, your working day suddenly shrinks dramatically. You have school holidays to navigate. Oh my gosh. It's incredibly rich and rewarding and probably equally challenging. But I'm still so grateful for it, because I actually, like, I just don't know how parents are meant to work in an employment situation where they have to be there 9 to 5, maybe longer, 5 days a week, you know, even if it's 4 days or 3 days, and parent and be present with your children. Like, I reclaiming my cyclical nature, really honoring my menstrual cycle, really seeing what my capacity is, really wanting to nourish myself and fill my cup first as much as I can so that I've got anything to give the kids. I couldn't do that if I was in a demanding job. The fact that I get to decide my hours and that gets to fluctuate every day, every week, on a whim. If I drop my daughter at school and she's like, yesterday I had to spend an hour with her at school because she wouldn't go to school, and most of the time I would just go, do you know what, just take the day off and stay home. We'll just spend the day together. Like, I can do that. I can be there with you. I can see you're really distressed. It's not worth pushing it. For me, that is such a privilege to be able to do that. But yesterday I couldn't. I had a business call. It was one of my, a group call for my mastermind that I run. And I really wanted to honor that. And I'm sure I could have contacted, the women in that group and said, this is happening. And they would have understood, because they're mothers too, running their own business, actually. But I really wanted to have that space after 4 weeks of school holidays. And I could sense that, if I gave her a bit of time and care and stayed with her and was present with her at school, we could actually ease her in. And I felt like that was in her highest good as well as my own. And I was able to do that instead of freaking out about it. I find that it can be really challenging between me and my husband, trying to work out whose work is more important sometimes, and who gets the priority and who gets the time, especially during school holidays when we're trying to balance anything. But I also try to factor in as much as I possibly can. Know when the school holiday dates are, I schedule them in at the start of the year, and I build my work around it. And I use those seasonal breaks as an invitation to rest, in winter holidays, to play in summer holidays, to step back, to kind of go, okay, there's certain commitments, there's certain things that are happening that just need to happen, and I need to honor that and make it work. But I'm not going to do anything else. around that. I'm going to take as much time off as I can. The call and support, you know, I have an incredible VA who's been in my business for like 4 years now and has got to the point where she doesn't even need my instruction or my guidance, really. She just does it. Like, thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Goddess, for sending her to me. You know, it's that kind of, like, I feel really privileged to be able to have her support me in this work as well. So yeah, and sometimes I just feel like, you know, I don't really feel like working. I'm constantly reviewing my work hours and what feels good to me. You know, as my children have got a little bit older, they're now 9, turning 7 and turning 5, which is very different to having a 5, 3 and a 1-year-old. So as they're kind of growing up a little bit, I'm seeing how things are changing, and my availability is changing. Next year, they'll all be in school 5 days. But as I have a little bit more space, you know, and I sleep these days, you know, I was doing a lot of this whilst breastfeeding, whilst not sleeping, and it was really, really challenging. So I would say that this season of life has really limited the amount of clients I can see. So I do group programs. I I have, you know, online circles, in-person circles, the facilitator training. I love group work. I love one-on-one work, but the group work helps me to, you know, support more people, I guess, in less time. And the one-on-one work, which I absolutely adore, I just know that my capacity for one-on-one clients is actually really low. Like, if I was to have, you know, 4 one-on-one clients, I'd be like, cool, that feels good. I could handle a little bit more, like, but then beyond that, it's just a big no. And so that, you know, that informs how I structure my work, how I price my work, like what availability I have. But just also really reflecting on, you know, if I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday where all of my children are at school, that is not much. And yet on Monday mornings, I really struggle to work. I really need a period of time to just transition out of family life and the chaos of getting the kids in school. And then it's like the whirlwind stops and I go, oh my gosh, I just need a moment to kind of, where am I? Who am I? What's going on again? And center. And so I have this principle of like feminine first, where I really need a buffer zone in the mornings after the kids go off. And I need to do something for myself to drop into my feminine, whether that's creativity, you know, music, embodiment, whether that's just simply having cacao or doing some journaling or going for a walk or just simply sitting there and just taking breaths, whatever. I just need a bit of a transitional point. So again, that influences my availability and my schedule. But having that awareness just helps me to kind of go, are we going to, you know, shove shit up a hill, or are we going to just honor where you're at and be with it and support yourself so that you don't burn out? Yeah, it's an ever evolving process and just a constant humbling reminder that I can only do what I can do, and that there is a whole lifetime potentially of doing this. And as somebody who's very creative, has a lot of new ideas, a lot of passion projects that I want to run, it's just, okay, what can I do now? What's meaningful? What's going to be useful to pour my energy into right now rather than scattering? So it does make me have a level of focus, but also hold freedoms, because I'm just where I'm at and I have compassion for that.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I feel confident that when the time comes that I'll have babies and a business to navigate together, that the years of experience I've also had in setting boundaries and figuring out when does and doesn't work for me, and just, I guess, like living a cyclical life, charting my cycle, like it will all support me in that moment. But I definitely hold people like you as examples that it's possible, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's always easy. And I always appreciate your honesty on this and from what you've shared now. But yeah, that it really is possible. You know, we all have something in our lives beyond work, hopefully many things. And this is life. It's learning how to be present with all of it when we're in it. So yeah, I really hear what you're sharing there on this. Yeah.
I think as well, it depends on where you're at in your business. So which season of business, you know, you're in. Like if you're just starting out, like just honoring that and giving it space. If you're in the throes of it and you're really trying to grow at a particular pace, you know, there might be moments in there where you're shown really what your capacity is, but you might also have support already in existing, you know, if your business is growing or you know, is in a more established phase where things are just running itself. So, you know, even from that lens, it varies, and it's going to vary with everybody and everybody's circumstances. It's entirely possible. I think it's just being with where you're at and not comparing yourself to where you think you should be, because that's obviously just a problem for everybody, not just even with this question.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Cycle Coach Show. If you loved what you heard, then please review, share, and subscribe to help us reach more cyclical listeners like you. You can find us on Instagram at Cycle Coach School or online at cyclecoachtraining.com.